The following is brought to you by Bleacher Report. If you guys want to check out my live post-game reaction show, make sure to have the Bleacher Report app downloaded and ready to fire up right after the game. You'll find me in the Chargers section. Bolt up.
Go to Bolt fam. It's the director. Chargers fans. Man, this was an up and down game for me, dude. In the end, I'm smiling. I'm grinning ear to ear. The Chargers really unlocked something special in the second half of this game. But I'll tell you, the first half of this game, dude, I was frustrated. What was the score at some point? Was it 9 to or 8 to 5 or something like that? Weird scoring. Chargers had some super sloppy play on special teams, almost allowing a touchdown off of a punt. Turned out to be a safety. There was some terrible, offensive play and just a lot of frustration in the first half that led a lot of us to believe this team was in a lot of trouble. And it still could end up being a big issue for the Chargers. However, the second half, and this is something that the Chargers have yet to really show us this season, they turned it on. They scored in the second half, which is something, again, we're kind of looking for more of in 2024, as well as maybe developed one of the most important connections that you are going to see from the Chargers this season. It is the Justin Herbert to Ladd McConkey trust, connection, chemistry, and honestly, execution. That was one of the best performances that I have seen from a rookie wide receiver on the Chargers in a long time. And Ladd McConkey, who really was one of my favorite draft prospects coming into the season, showed me everything I was excited for all in one game versus the Saints, which again felt like it was brought back from the ashes. The Chargers, they came back lean, mean, and ready to compete in the second half. And off the back of Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, and a great defensive performance, the Chargers once again find themselves with a little bit of momentum. Now, I'm going to say this. The Chargers had some work to do in this game that, again, in the first half led to some frustration. The big thing that I required from the Chargers this week was a 21 at least points scored by the offense, considering who the opponent was. The New Orleans Saints, these guys are the ranked 32 defense in football. And the Chargers, who had just played the Arizona Cardinals last week, who are also not a great defense, did not get a lot of momentum, not a lot of scoring, and ultimately lost that game versus the Cardinals last week. I did not want to see a repeat. I wanted to think, hey, the Chargers had a bad week Monday Night Football. They couldn't get anything going offensively. It just was not their day. If they had a repeat struggle game versus the Saints, who are the worst defense in football, then we have to start, red alerting, right? We got to turn on the alarms a little bit and find ourselves in a difficult position for the rest of the season. If you can't score a number 32 defense, you're going to have a lot harder time scoring versus other opponents like Cleveland, who did beat the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens themselves, who we play a little bit later on, and of course, the Chiefs. You can't move the football versus the Saints. You have pretty much no hope versus those teams. Well, they did go out there and prove me wrong in the second half. After only posting 8 points in the first half, the Chargers, once again, found a way in the fourth quarter. I should say, I'm repeating myself because they don't do that very often. They found a way in the fourth quarter to really prove me wrong and say, hey, we're going to get you 21. We're going to get you even more at 26 points. Funny enough, if you watch my game preview of this game on my YouTube channel, my final score prediction for this game, which was kind of my get right game, was 9-27. We were 1 point off on each side. Of course, the final score being 8-26. This makes me feel a lot better as a Chargers fan. I know we got some Chargers fans probably in the chat right now. Shout out to all you guys in there. We got Adam and we got Donald and you guys. How do you guys feel coming out of this game? Some people will say it's not enough. I'm still feeling anxious. The offense still hasn't proven it to me. Other people will say, okay, this could be the thing that rights the ship a little bit. Of course, the offense isn't working the way that we had envisioned at the top of the season as fans. And I guarantee you, the coaching and the coordinators and all this stuff are thinking the same thing, right? Like, this isn't that run first team that we were hoping to trot out with this season. We don't have Gus Edwards. The interior of the offensive line is absolutely awful. What are we going to do? Well, I think the answer was always going to be, at least for this season, right, as you're figuring it out, you got to lean back into what works. And what works is Justin Herbert. The problem is Justin Herbert, with the lack of wide receiver talent, or I should say even ball, catching talent, It just hasn't looked like himself this season. There's not a lot of chemistry. He missed a lot of training camp. Ladd McConkey, as awesome as he was in terms of the draft, I don't know if there was enough time for them to really develop that kind of trust and chemistry. Well, it feels like this is the game where they broke through. And you should see a lot more passing, a lot more success from the passing, a lot more trust in Justin Herbert to Ladd McConkey. It could be unlocking a lot of what you need to see in the future. Does it mean we're done? No, absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to save most of that for tomorrow, a little bit about what the Chargers need to do in order to get things really set for a second half run in terms of trade. But right now, just having that trust and result in Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey spells a lot of confidence in me. So before we get into a lot of the cool stuff that happened in the second half, let's go ahead and spell out a little bit what happened in the first half that has me pretty worried about the rest of the season and why I think the Chargers really need to be buyers in the trade environment just before the deadline coming up on November 5th. One of the biggest, most noticeable holes you're going to see on the Chargers roster is going to be wide receiver. No, surprise here. Every Chargers fan is pounding the table to get a wide receiver on the roster to help, honestly, open things up for Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston when he comes back and help Justin Herbert out, help get some perimeter help, especially to create some more space underneath. But, honestly, the more we're watching the Chargers play and the more we're seeing some of the problems on offense, interior offensive line is sneakily climbing up the needs priority list for me quite a bit. Shout out to Bradley Bozeman, who defended quarterback Justin Herbert after a not-so-stellar play from Shepard on the defense of the Saints. That fired up a lot of Chargers fans, and especially the Chargers themselves, as you noticed. But outside of that, Bradley Bozeman has not had a good season, man. Guard Trey Pipkins, he's been mostly not great. And especially, probably the biggest disappointment on that offensive line right now has been, in my opinion, Zion Johnson, Chargers' former first-round selection. Now that is a problem for a Jim Harbaugh offense, and why I think the Chargers have every reason to lean back into the Justin Herbert passing offense while they bring in the pieces they need to truly run what Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh want to be in the future. I'm not saying let's abandon the run. Absolutely not. The Chargers have to get more creative in getting space for JK, being more successful on the ground. But until they bring in some help, especially in the interior of that offensive line, I think it's going to be much more difficult than they had anticipated. And until then, I say lean in on Justin Herbert, lean in on Ladd McConkey, try to be more of that, pass balance, run balance team while you're assembling those pieces and getting the offense and the new, system comfortable with all of the players. I see absolutely no reason not to do that. And especially if you're going to continue being successful to that mindset, you just need a few more pieces to help yourself now and in the future. And I'm going to go ahead and spoiler alert now. A way the Chargers can help themselves out in that arena is, one, go get yourself a wide receiver to really help things open up. Because if you get an offensive lineman right now via trade, yes, there's a chance that they could help, but that position takes a lot more time to develop and get comfortable in a new setting. It could take, I saw Duke Merriweather post about this. He's one of those guys, the trainers that help offensive linemen in the offseason. He says, again, don't quote me on this, that it could take 4 to 6 weeks for offensive line to gel and become comfortable with each other. And being 8 weeks into the season, there's just not a lot of time to pick up an interior guy and say, hey, let's fix this big problem we're having in the middle to become that run team. It just feels like that's something you're probably going to have to address in the offseason via free agency and the draft especially, right? It doesn't mean you couldn't do it. I think you still could if you wanted to. But if you want to hit on a position that has a higher success rate of contributing right away, like you need help in the middle of the season, you only have a couple of games to get these guys situated, it's going to be wide receiver, tight end, running back. Those are the guys that you can acquire via trade in the middle of the year and say, hey, they really helped us out in that final stretch and into the postseason because they just don't take that much time. And in my opinion, there's a couple ways to go about this. One, wide receiver certainly could be something that the Chargers target. I think Deontay Johnson's kind of a favorite for everybody. Mike Williams could be a really good ad considering he already has familiarity and chemistry with Justin Herbert. but I'm kind of pounding the table, me personally, for a tight end. I think tight end both builds for the now and for the needs now and for the vision of the future. You need a pass catching tight end. You need somebody that can go out there and help move the offense and create some space underneath for Ladd McConkey and the other receivers. But you also need somebody that can contribute in this run system that you're trying to implement. I think that really good tight end kind of fixes both your problems there. Will Dissly's been great the last couple of weeks in terms of, holding down the fort at tight end 1. But I think you really need a guy. And that's why I'm going to continue pounding the table for David Njoku, who's sneakily a great run-blocking tight end, as well as we've seen it today, an insane touchdown grab by him in terms of his passing talent, or his receiving talent. So, yeah, dude, I think we'll elaborate a little bit more on that in tomorrow's show. We're going to do a follow-up show on Bleacher Report. But I think it really is imperative for GM Joe Ortiz to make a trade, and let's see how far we can get this season. We have the resources next year to really, pay guys and trade for. We got a lot of draft capital. You got to make a move. I think it's pretty much mandatory at this time. All right. So given the first half of this game, those were my concerns. The Chargers just weren't moving the ball. The run game wasn't getting going. The defense was playing out of their minds despite not a lot of help from the offense. It was kind of a sloppy first half, especially on special teams. My word, we had the missed extra point. We had the botched, punt snap from long snapper Josh Harris. Like, it was a very bad first half. But if anything, the Chargers gave me a lot of confidence and relief when they came out into the second half. They had obviously turned it on. And you saw some big plays all of a sudden from Justin Herbert. There was that one play. And again, I'm not going to react as big as I did live on stream, but I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you were to go back and see how I reacted to a particular play by a particular defensive player by the name of Shepard on the Saints defensive line, I will tell you that I was losing it a little bit here. Because if you guys were to watch that, there's a little extra on top in terms of roughing the passer, however you want to call it. There was just some not so sportsman-like contact in terms of twisting Justin Herbert's leg well past the end of a play. And that got me fired up. I was especially angry. You saw Bradley Bozeman go in there and make some contact. The Chargers ended up getting a flag on that too. It was infuriating. After that play, though, Justin, it just felt like he was like, hey, dude, it's time. We're turning it on. And he followed that up by, you know what, until we figure it out as we get going in the fourth quarter, he started sprinting and taking off on the ground. Was he our lead runner today? Actually, I'm going to go take a look at the stats real quick. Was Justin Herbert, I'm actually going to bring you guys along with me. Let's have some fun here. Was Justin Herbert the lead rusher for the Chargers this week? Let's go take a look. Stats by the Chargers, side of the football, Justin Herbert. No, it was just edged out by J.K. Dobbins. But Justin Herbert, 49 yards on 4 carries. This dude was running angry. You guys remember that in the second half? He took off for, it was like 20-something yards, 30 yards, something like that. That was awesome. You could tell that he was like, okay, if we're doing this, let's do this. Because I can guarantee you he was not happy with that extra contact from Shepard in that game. And he started taking off. Then you started seeing a little bit more bold plays coming in from Justin Herbert in terms of trusting his receivers, especially Ladd McConkey this week, which, my word, we'll get into in just a second. 111, 2 touchdowns, insane. You saw some big plays from Josh Palmer, a couple nice plays from Will Dissly. Of course, that big play to help seal it up at the end there with Jalen Reagor. Justin Herbert finally is starting to hit this stride of a Herbert that we recognize. If you were to look at the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season for the Chargers, I don't think Justin Herbert broke 200 yards. In the past 3 weeks alone, we had was it a 350-yard day? We had a 250-yard day. Well, a couple of over 200-yard days. He's really started to look like the Justin Herbert of old. And with that confidence, we saw a lot of movement on the offense, a lot of momentum brought back to the offense. Touchdowns for Dobbins, touchdowns for who was the receiving? 2 for Ladd McConkey. Like, that is what you need to see. And this is why I'm kind of circling right back around to my first point. The Chargers, who want to be a run-first offense, they got to lean into this, baby. We got Justin Herbert. He's back. He's absolutely back. And we need to make sure that if the Chargers' best opportunity at scoring touchdowns runs through Justin Herbert and the receivers, as much as we think they don't have as much talent and that he needs more help, I still think that's the way to go while we continue to build whatever it is we need to add to the offensive line, to the running back room, to get this number closer to 100 every single week for the running backs. Of course, Justin Herbert helped out tremendously this week. Kamani Vidal had a bit more of a workload, but it's certainly something that brings a lot of confidence to me for the rest of the year. Justin Herbert is back. The passing game is alive. And just imagine what this team will look like if this connection continues to grow. If the connection and the confidence and the execution continues to look like what it did this week with Ladd McConkey and Justin Herbert, we might just be back in business, baby. Ladd McConkey. Let's go ahead and put the spotlight on him for a couple of minutes here. This is one, again, like I said, of the best rookie wide receiver performances I've seen from the Chargers in a long time, and we needed to see it this week. Again, if the Chargers score less than 26 points, or I should say 21 points, I'm disappointed versus this worst defense in the NFL, in the New Orleans Saints. Well, guess what? They did it. Off the back of Ladd McConkey, off the back of J.K. Dobbins, we got the 21 and then a little bit extra from the kicker in Cameron Dicker. This is exactly what I wanted to see. And again, this is the score prediction I had. I had 9-27 as my final score prediction. And this is, 1 point off. Very, very happy to see this, though, because it does push us back on track. But like I said before, Ladd McConkey, I really do think, and this is something, I'm actually going to go back to the wide for this, because this is a very, very important point that I'm going to try and make right now. A lot of the times you're going to hear from coaches and GMs and stuff, so you're never one move away from being perfect, right? You're never one move away from being a complete team. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the Chargers, in my opinion, are one move away from being a very dangerous offense once again. Not because the Chargers have figured it out, Ladd McConkey's the new god or whatever, but really when you've got a situation where adding an extra pass catcher that can stretch the field, that can bring a perimeter threat, that can open up more space for what's obviously a really good receiver in Ladd McConkey. And once you've identified that, hey, we got to really lean back into the pass a little bit, the run's kind of getting there, but we might need another offseason to continue building to that point. Once all these pieces kind of fall into place and you recognize the situation you're in, and you see the sort of talent and potential that is just leaning on the edge for the Chargers wide receivers, imagine what adding a Deontay Johnson does to this equation. All of a sudden, you've got DBs that can't sit low all the time. You got guys that got to respect the sidelines, and that's going to happen is you're going to see a lot more space underneath from McConkey, maybe guys like, Kamani Vidal and these dudes that can really produce after the catch. Like, you're going to see some results. And that's why I think, yes, you're never one move away from being complete, but I think the Chargers are one move away from being legit, and it's a pass catcher. I don't care if it's a good tight end like Njoku, or if it's a great wide receiver like Deontay Johnson, or a fast guy like Darius Slayton. All these guys are going to result in a much better situation for the Chargers. Mike Williams is very high on my list too, because if you're really confident in DJ Chark, I want some insurance for that in Mike Williams, that you're going to have a guy on the perimeter. You know what I mean? Chargers, in my opinion, yes, are one move away from really picking things up on offense for the remainder of the season. Let's not get ahead of ourselves too much, though. This, New Orleans Saints defense, again, they are, number 32 in the league. And for me, it was almost required that they score at least 21 points. But this does show that you have potential. We did see guys on the perimeter getting wide open because, again, just like last week, the Cardinals, who were just sitting low with their DBs, had no reason to back up. The Saints were doing the same thing early. The difference is the Chargers, they got wise to it, and they said, hey, okay, we're going to start testing you on the outside with Josh Palmer, who has no business out there, with Ladd McConkey on one-on-ones, who has no business getting the ball in those situations. And it worked. That's proof that the Chargers are maybe one move away from really unlocking something special on the offense. Finally, before we start wrapping up this video, we have to pay respect to the defense. Now, there was some sloppy play this week. I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of yards given up. As a matter of fact, let's go back to the Saints for a second here. 156 to Rattler. I didn't like that. 122 to Hayner, who only played like the last quarter and a half. I did not like that. That adds up to what, like 300 yards passing, just about. Versus the Saints, that's not my favorite thing in the world. However, you also have to sort of look at the end result here, dude. The Chargers only allowed 8 points to the New Orleans Saints, which hasn't been the case all season. Let's be honest. Of course, they don't have Derek Carr right now, but this is a better than 8-point offense. Olave was back. They had Jawan Johnson kind of going crazy. Alvin Kamara has been having a sensational season. Despite all of that and all the playmakers that the Saints have on offense, the Chargers were still able to hold them under 10 points. 8 points for this week. The Chargers have been by far and away the best defense in the NFL when it comes to limiting scoring. I think they're at something like 17.1 or 3 points per game last time I checked. An 8-point game is going to really help that metric out, even look even better, right? And that's because they've been just nothing but consistent this season. They have been on another level. And I don't care if it's a rookie quarterback. I don't care if it's a young defense. I don't care about any of that situation. Holding them to under 10 points was the requirement for me. Hey, this team is down bad. You can't just beat them. You have to squish them. And the Chargers squished them on defense this week. Absolutely what I needed to see. The Chargers offense squished them on offense. That's exactly what I needed to see. Bravo to especially the defense this season. Dayan Henley made some awesome plays. Derwin James made some big plays. A lot of the Tennessee guys that we brought in this offseason. T.R. Tart had a really nice, pass defended. You had Elijah Molden, who almost had 2 interceptions. I know he had at least the one. You had Christian Fulton, who was playing great today. Very, very good defense. And then you got guys that got no business being as good as they are right now in the late round rookies, and Tareeb Still and Cam Hart. Man, Tareeb Still, what an awesome option at nickel. Great coverage, dude. He's been playing out of his mind when called upon. And then you got this guy, Cam Hart, who's one of the most physically intimidating corners that I've seen in a while, man. This dude lays the boomstick. And just everything is sort of working great for the Chargers defense. Sure, there's this little soft zone in the middle that I hate that keeps getting exploited. But outside of that, the Chargers have been awesome. And so I think the biggest point that I want to make now at the end of this video is a lot of people and a lot of fans that I'm hearing from don't know what to make of the Chargers this season. Do we go in and try and win? Do we go in and try and make a nice playoff push? Or is this really that retooling season where, the expectation is that we fall short, we don't make the postseason, and we just kind of reload and come back next season? At this point, and again, it's still kind of murky given the situation and the rest of the schedule and all this kind of stuff, but at this point, I think this season is so worth fighting for, especially because you are the best defense in terms of scoring in the NFL. Do not waste a best defense in the NFL season. Never, ever, ever do that, because like they say, the classic saying, defense wins championships. And if you've got the best one, you do not dare give up on it, which is why I think we should be seeing a trade here very soon. You have Justin Herbert, who's now finally starting to find his groove in the second half of the year. Do not waste it. And like I said earlier in the video, you may be one move away from really unlocking some special stuff and results on the offense. Do not waste this season. This season's worth fighting for. We have an enormous amount of resources to pull off a trade here in the next couple of weeks. We have got to hone in and make it happen. And again, I'm going to talk your ears off about it tomorrow on tomorrow's show on Bleacher Report as well. But as for this game, the Chargers did what they needed to do. It was a very messy first half, but they completely redeemed themselves in the second half. Very proud of the Chargers for breaking that trend of not scoring in the second half, and Justin Herbert for getting angry and finding a way to move the football, whether it be by his own legs or by spectacular plays that he's taking chances on to those wide receivers. Definitely a great day for Chargers football, and one that I hope continues building some momentum for the future. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Shout out to everybody in the chat for hanging out with us. Should be a very fun rest of the season. Of course, the Chargers, it gets a little bit steeper in terms of quality of opponent, but I do think the Chargers, as they continue to figure stuff out with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter, that you're going to continue seeing a little bit more confidence each and every week. Well, guys, we'll catch you next week. As always, this has been The Director. Hit us up with a follow on here if you did enjoy this content here on Bleacher Report. We'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up and stay frosty.